Welcome back to the Two Goat Show. We're your hosts, Miriah and Steph. We're here. Happy Thursday. How you doing, Steph?
I'm okay. I mean, I got back from Vegas Tuesday. The only thing that sucks now, I feel like I'm getting sick, like I'm coming down with something,
Oh,
so
no.
to make matters worse, but um hanging in there. What else can you do, right? We're used to this.
Yeah. What else do we know besides pain and heartache? I've heard a lot of people that were in Vegas this past weekends, week plus whatever. All are sick now. I'm like, dang,
Yeah.
I'm very glad I didn't go out. Like the day I went out to the
Something's going
opening
on over there.
events, I was by myself, so I didn't go near nobody, touch anything, touch anybody. And then I stayed inside, so at least I'm not dealing with that on that side. But yes, it's definitely been some pain. I keep telling myself, I don't know why you're taking it harder than probably some of the players, but like you gotta get yourself together here. You didn't play in the game,
We're definitely not taking it harder than the players, and that, like, honestly, that makes me more sad, right? Like because
Yeah.
on Sunday after the game, I was like, dude, like I feel so gutted. I was so sad, and then even just the thought of how they must feel made me even more sad. And I think even today, they still have to deal with that. They lived it,
Yeah.
They played the game. There has to be some feelings of, there's things they could have done differently, could have done better, all these things, all those thoughts go through their heads, I'm sure. So yeah, it's a different kind of pain for them, I think.
Yeah, all that. And then when they did their press conferences, when they got back to over there, like the Brandon Ayuk one, like, oh my God. Seriously, I was like tearing up listening to that, and it was just like, like you just felt like the pain, like, even the ones that weren't there, like actually crying, like you could, like CMC, for example, like you could hear the pain in his voice,
Right.
like, and like it just like, yeah, he put the ball on the ground, but we wouldn't have been there if it wasn't for him, and some of the backlash and the shit people are saying to him, it's just like I know that's the nature of the sport, and they all get it, but it just sucks that the guys that especially literally put this team on their back and carried us through the entire season, and he's getting treated like a piece of shit. And like I said, I know it's the nature of the business, but it still sucks. Like these guys are human at the end of the day. And
Exactly.
like you're seeing like some emotional, behaviors like from them too. Like, you think to the that O-line beef that's going on between Feliciano and Burford, right? Like that, like you could just like, like they're hurt, like, and what are, so they're hurting each other, unfortunately. And it's just like, man, obviously the Brandon Ayuk stuff, like we'll talk about that, but like you can just tell like he's hurt, his family's hurt, like, and like that's the sucky part of like sports, of everything. What's up, chat? Hope everybody's doing great. DG, what's up? I did want to start off with paying respects to Kansas City, to the city of Kansas City, to the Kansas City Chiefs fans, to anybody and everybody that was affected by the events yesterday at the parade. It's very unfortunate, and I talked about this on my show yesterday. It sucks that a team and fans and everybody that's worked so hard and put so much into a team throughout the whole season and winning a championship, and they go to celebrate, and it ends in such a terrible fucking thing, and like I hate that that's where we are as people, as a whole United States. Like, it just sucks. And like, I was talking to people, and it's like, that's what stopped me from going to the Aces parade, our last, the back-to-back parade, was because that's what I kept thinking. Like, like, I want to go out there and celebrate so bad, but at the same time, it's like, is it worth what could possibly happen to me, to my family, and it's like, you don't want to live your life in fear at the same time, but it's like, you have to unfortunately think about those things now before you go to any type of event, and it's terrible. Children were hurt, lives were lost, a lot of families and people affected by senseless acts, and so I do want to put, all prayers and healing vibes and, so much love out to Kansas City and to anybody that was affected by that.
Yeah. Well said.
Yeah. So yeah, chat, what's up? I hope everybody is doing well. Happy Thursday to everybody. Hope everybody had a safe and trip home from Vegas, from celebrating, from all that. Unfortunately, we aren't champions. We didn't get to have a parade. We didn't get to celebrate. Like I was telling Steph before we started the show, like, we're just losers now, we're just with the rest of the teams on the couch in Cabo, wherever we're going. And already, into the offseason, it's been so eventful. Like, the very next day after winning the Super Bowl, stuff's already like happening. And it's just like, made me think, I'm like, okay, buckle up, because it's going to be a long offseason. I do want to start off. Let's start off with, some big news, obviously, that happened yesterday. And obviously that's that Steve Wilks was fired. It's been very interesting on social media since, because you have like two groups of people. The people that the 49ers are racist, they are fired. Wilks speak, and Shanahan's the one that lost the game, the Super Bowl. Like, these people that haven't watched the 49ers all season have no clue what's going on with them, and thinks that Wilk was just fired because of the Super Bowl results. And then obviously the fans, we're always all over the place. But me personally, where I'm at with it is, I think whether we won or lost, he was out of here. I think that there's been clues throughout the whole season that shit wasn't right. That I don't know if Shanahan and him butt heads behind, closed doors or what, but it was just like the vibe wasn't there. Like, we know, 49ers fans know, watching our team, watching our, players talk, our coaches talk, watching everything that we're allowed to have access to, what it appears to us is that this team's a family. These players, these coaches, they play for each other. They love each other. It's a true brotherhood. And when you try to add somebody in from the outside that just doesn't gel with what you got going on, for whatever reasons, it's nothing against Wilks. It's not that he's a bad coach or he's a bad person, or nothing to do with that, and I wish him the best, and I think he can go on to be a great coach somewhere else. But it didn't seem like he fit with what we had going on, and it stuck out. Like, when you have Shanahan coming out, I never heard Shanahan come out and throw other coaches under the bus before. And when you have Shanahan coming out after that Minnesota loss and throwing Wilks under the bus for his play calling and the coverage that he called, and then obviously we know the whole moving down to the field thing, you're taking him out of his element, and moving him down to the field. And it just seemed like the playoffs, obviously, we know the defense hadn't played great. The defensive line hasn't lived up to anything that it was supposed to. We talked about that the entire season. We had players coming out, dropping hints in their media sessions and whatnot. Bosa, Gibson, Fred said stuff. Greenlaw mentioned stuff when they talked to him in the locker room. So, I think anybody that was actually paying attention to the situation could see that something wasn't right. So to me, I think he would have been fired, like I said, win or loss. What are your whole thoughts on the whole Wilks firing? Where you're at with the would he have been fired either way? And then let's segue into replacements for Wilks.
Yeah, I definitely think he would have been fired either way. I think had the 49ers won, I think it would have been framed a little bit differently, maybe worded as a mutual parting. Um, and so I think he was gone regardless. I think we saw the writing on the wall pretty early in the season that there was some tension there. I mean, you mentioned the Vikings game. That was pretty much one of the first instances, and it didn't really feel like it ended there. Like even after the bye week, yeah, like you mentioned, forcing him down to the field, even the comments from players, even the questions about effort. I mean, I think that comes down to the defensive coordinator too, and it just felt like at some point in the season there were a lot of players on that defense that maybe weren't playing as hard for him as we've seen them play for Robert Saleh, D'Amico Ryans. And I think it did have some to do with like there being a disconnect there. Something just felt off all season. And so, sure, people can point to stats and be like, well, this was a top 5 defense in the league. But really, when you look at when you really drill into the numbers, they underperformed in a lot of metrics. And especially when you take into account the all pro players that they had, the personnel that they had. Not only should this have been a top 5 defense for the entire season, but I think it needed to be potentially a historic defense. Like that's kind of what the 49ers were banking on with the group that they put together. And that's not what they got with Steve Wilks. Now, I do think it was a little difficult to put Steve Wilks in that situation of, trying to put a square peg into a round hole, right? Like I think they forced him out of his element, like you said, but also I don't think he had a lot of flexibility in a lot of things. So I think that made it difficult. As the season progressed, it didn't seem like there was trust between Kyle Shanahan and Steve Wilks. That's an issue. We saw the rumors that Kyle Shanahan had a huge hand in the game plan, the defensive game plan for the Super Bowl. And I feel like that's an issue. Like if Kyle Shanahan feels like he needs to pretty much come up with a defensive game plan, that is a red flag. And that's why I think it would have happened either way.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally forgot about that. I had seen, things going around that he did that. And yeah. And what do you think, like, wouldn't you, even if you were Steve Wilks, like want out of that situation as
Yeah.
well?
I'm sure he did. And that's why I'm like, even if the 49ers had won, like they would have said it was a mutual thing. Cause I think Wilks was probably like, I'm actually good. Like I'm good off this, like I can't
Yeah.
even coach the way I want to coach here. I get undermined, just things like that. So yeah, I think the writing was on the wall. Anyone who is telling you that Steve Wilks is just a scapegoat is gaslighting you.
Right.
It's way deeper than that.
Yeah. The thing that sucks, is that we were in the Super Bowl, so a lot of, most of the positions in the coaching cycle have already been filled, so
Yeah.
what sucks for Wilks is that he was fired so late into the, to that whole process. So it's like he may have to sit out, this upcoming season, and that it sucks. Gammon, as always, we appreciate you. Thank you so much. Says, brothers and sisters, we're here for the same reasons. Non-toxic community, no false narratives, grassroots approach, spread the word. She's on TV. Appreciate you, Gammon. So replacements. I saw, let me pull up these names thrown out there. Let me ask you what you think about these, and if you had your pick out of them, who you would take. Bill Belichick, Mike Vrabel, Johnny Holland, which is our linebacker coach, Chris Kosarek, obviously the D-line coach up until this point, hasn't wanted the job. We know that that's been put out there. And one that's not on the list, but I keep seeing, thrown out there as well, is Bullock. If you have any other names added to the list, or, one of those guys who you would choose, let me know.
I know Brandon Staley is like a name that's been getting thrown out there too, as well as like some like college coaches or assistants. I have a hard time like telling you who would be a good fit as far as just like an obvious choice for like best choice. I think like Bill Belichick, just for all of the experience that he brings. I don't recall ever seeing a defense that he coached or was a head coach for that didn't play hard. Like they always played hard even if the personnel wasn't that great. Like, they always had great game plans, great adjustments. And so I think that's something the 49ers, could use in this case and could get back to. Very different style, from maybe what they're used to. But I think, I had this conversation with Rob earlier and he's like, he'd be respected. Like you can't not respect Bill
Yeah.
Belichick, So I think he can be a guy that come in right away and, take off with the defense. That being said, it's probably unlikely just given the fact that he's at a point in his career. We're not sure if that's something he'd be interested in. But the 49ers have to try. I mean, you have to try. So it really doesn't hurt to make a phone call and see what it would take to get that done. Mike Vrabel, I mean, he has experience with linebackers, like former linebackers coach. So, that would make him an attractive candidate, I think. I'm not sure like how well his defenses had performed in the past. So I know some people mentioned that his defenses were somewhat subpar. So and on the comment that Belichick with his ego and Kyle Shanahan's ego would be a problem. I actually think I actually don't think they would clash. And I'll tell you why. I think Kyle Shanahan wants a defensive coordinator he can trust to just handle the defense. Kyle Shanahan wants nothing to do with the defense if it were up to him, right? Like, and I think the reason he liked D'Amico and Saleh was because he knew he can trust them to coach them the right way. Like they were homegrown in the building, So uh, never was there a time where it seemed like Kyle Shanahan didn't trust those guys or didn't like let them take care of the defense on their own, even in their first years, which wasn't like perfect by any means for them. So I think if Kyle Shanahan just lets Bill Belichick do his thing, and I think he would trust him in those spots to do the right thing. I mean, why wouldn't you, right? So you got to respect him, you got to trust him, and I think they trust and respect each other. So I actually don't think that would be as big an issue as some people think.
Yeah, and they're also friends. They have a personal relationship, so it's not like you're just bringing Belichick in and he has no relationship with Kyle whatsoever. So, I personally don't want Bill Belichick. I'm just stating,
What's
I
your reservation there?
He's old. He's old school. He's like, I just think, I don't know, like his last how many years, since Brady's left, like his team has been not wonderful. The players haven't been bought into the system anymore. There's
If I
been a lot of chatter coming out of
if I can argue to those points,
that.
I would say like the him being old, like that's a concern. But at the same time, if you bring in a young coach, they're gonna get poached. for probably a head coaching position at some point. Like that's happened in the 49ers over and over again, right? So I think if you get an older coach, look at the Chiefs with Spags. Nobody wants Spags, one, because he's old, and two, because he has been a head coach before. That experiment didn't go well. On the other hand, kind of like what you're saying, people are like kind of on the fence on Bill Belichick, one, because he's old, uh, and I'm talking as a head coach,
Yeah.
candidate,
Hmm.
because he's old, and because, oh, like, maybe his time is kind of done here in the league, right? Like that's the reason. So I think like it's actually a perfect opportunity for the 49ers because, you know, you make a fair point, Miriah. Like I think towards the end of that tenure in New England, definitely it seemed to fall on deaf ears, like his message, right? Like it just wasn't the same as it was before with Tom Brady, right?
Hmm.
He wouldn't have to worry about a lot of those things though. He wouldn't be the head coach. He would just worry about the defense. And so he doesn't really have a message to all the players, and mind you, like all the 49ers players wouldn't have heard whatever message he has before, so it would be new to them. And I think they would be open-minded to it just because of who he is.
I will say for, that a young guy, he might get poached. We do know that, I mean, if we were to get Belichick for this season, I'm sure it wouldn't go beyond that anyways. He doesn't want to be a DC for the rest of his career. He talked about coming back to coach, and it would be because he wants to pass that head coaching record of all-time wins. He can't do that as a DC. So, like I
How
think
much
we'd be
more does he
lucky to
need
get
for that?
him. I'm not sure. Just off the top of my head. I know it's not a lot though. I know, obviously if we were to get him for a season, it would probably be due to obviously it was a numbers game. They ran out of head coaching jobs this cycle, and for whatever reason, the other candidates got it over him. Next season, more head coaching jobs open. So I wouldn't think that he would stay a DC anywhere, whether it's here, anywhere, whether it's jobless even. I don't think it happens for more than a season or two anyway.
Yeah.
um I personally would rather them get somebody from within. If they have somebody, obviously don't just throw somebody in there because you have a job opening and need to fill the position. If you have somebody like a Bullock that's been with the team 7 years now, um you know and you feel that you can trust him and he's ready for it, I would rather that. We see that our guys, they seem to respond a lot better to people when they're already coming from within.
Yeah.
This going out of the building this last time, look how it worked out. Like, I don't want to waste another season because we get a guy from outside that isn't gelling with the players again, and the players don't want to play for him, and Kyle wants him to run his scheme and not their scheme, and wants this and all this same mess again if we get somebody from the outside. So, I don't think Chris Kocurek, like I said, he hasn't wanted it in the past. And the reason I was on board for him getting it in the past, because we knew that, there was an assistant D-line coach behind him waiting in the wings that could take over the D-line. Well, we no longer have that. We lost him now to Washington. So I prefer Chris just stays right there at the D-line.
Yeah.
Johnny Holland, I don't know.
Well,
Like, I
so I
don't know
was
too much about Holland, really.
I was talking to Rob about that earlier because I was like, yeah, why is no one mentioning Johnny Holland? Like, linebackers coach, they've had internal linebackers coaches, like, be promoted to defensive coordinator seamlessly for
Mhm.
both times they've done it. Well, why wouldn't that be an option? I was reminded, I guess he's had like medical issues this year. So, he didn't step down or anything, but
Right.
I think at some points had to like maybe step away to deal with that. So I don't know if that would be, a reason. Um, but yeah, as far as the internal candidates, I do like it for the reasons you mentioned. Like it has worked in the past. It's tried and true. Uh, but I wonder if they even have someone who they think is ready, because there's a reason they went with an external candidate to begin with, right? Like all these guys were around last year when they were looking for a defensive coordinator then, right? None of those guys were deemed, I guess, to be the defensive coordinator for whatever reason. We don't know, right? So I don't know how much a year really changes that. Hopefully maybe it did, but not sure.
Yeah. Hopefully, we don't have to wait too much longer and they make a decision. Let's talk a little bit about the O-line. The O-line has been a problem season after season after season after season. We've seen the 49ers draft a few O-line players, Banks in the second, some couple guys, third, fourth, later rounds after that. Obviously, we know they went out and got Trent. They've gone out and got, older centers, different random guys throughout. Still continues to be a problem. The 49ers added assistant O-line coach Cameron Clemens to the 49ers today. So kind of just wrap your thoughts in about him. But I want to ask you this, Forrester. Usually when we continue to have, and not just with the 49ers, I'm saying in general, when you continue to have a problem at, let's say, O-line, and you've drafted players, you haven't seen anything come of them, like Banks is the exception, right? Like, is it like we're always yelling to the 49ers, draft O-line, draft O-line. You need to draft O-line. Like I've seen people already putting out there, like, you need to draft 8 of the upcoming picks, all O-line. Like, so we want to continue to draft O-line, which I agree we need to do, right? But we're going to keep taking those young guys that need to be developed and giving them to Forrester, who hasn't shown that he has developed a single guy since he's been here. Obviously, as I'll say, Banks has been different. And we continue every single season and offseason to complain about the O-line. O-line, O-line, O-line. Get us better O-line players. O-line players, O-line players. When is it ever going to come back to maybe the O-line coach is a problem? Because I never hear his name brought up in any discussions about, is he doing his job? Is he not doing his job? Is he getting the most out of his players? He gets up there and talks in front of the media and he can ramble and ramble and ramble a good game, but is he putting his players in the best position to succeed? Should his seat start, begin to warm up if we continue to draft O-line players? Let's say we finally have a first round pick. Let's say the 49ers go out and they get a right guard, right tackle in this year's draft, first round, second round. And we see them come to this team. Okay, they have an up and down rookie year and then just fall off a cliff. Like, what, like, when are we going to maybe like look at Forrester as the issue and not all the players that we're trying to place into these positions? Your thoughts on the O-line, on Cameron Clemens, and on Forrester, who's been known to do some crazy stuff. Let's say that too.
I don't know much about Cameron Clemens, so I can't really comment on that. On like the Chris Forrester thing, I don't know if it would all be on him. Like I don't think the 49ers have prioritized offensive line nearly as much as they should. And part of that has to do with Kyle feeling like he can get away with with less on the offensive side of the ball, on offensive line. Exactly. So it's not all on Forrester, although we did see a lot of execution issues with the offensive line on Sunday. A lot of it had to do with Spencer Burford. A lot of it had to do with protection issues, which, the center sets the protection. I actually was reading a great piece on that from Jake Hutchinson before we went live. So if you guys check that out, I believe it was on odyssey.com because he works for 95.7 The Game. But what I was reading so far was very informational. But anyway, like if the offensive line was invested in as much as the defensive line, do you think we'd still have a problem? I don't know. Like I think there's a lack of talent on the offensive line outside of obviously Trent Williams. Um, like your point about developing guys, I mean, that could be fair. Aaron Banks was a second round pick, and he's probably, I mean, he's okay, like he's still not like, the greatest considering
How
he was
would
a
he
second
be if
round
he was
pick.
playing against a regular left tackle? Let's say Joe
Yeah.
Schmo at left tackle. Would Aaron Banks still be as great as he seems to have been this last couple years? Like, we'll never know.
I think also too, because like the 49ers, like what they look for in offensive linemen is so vastly different than what other teams ask for from their teams. Like 49ers offensive linemen, they need to be athletic. And so usually they're not as stout as most offensive linemen are. So it's a rare mix, I guess, to find a guy who has the talent. And like Trent Williams is a freak, right? Like we know Trent Williams is a freak, but it's exactly what the 49ers look for. You're not going to find Trent Williams, like they just don't grow on trees. So you're either going to have the athleticism and less talent for the position, or you're going to have the talent but you're not going to have the athleticism. If you don't have the athleticism, Kyle simply won't be able to use you, so that's kind of the issue. Yeah, and I don't know if I put it all on Forrester, although like I said, there were some execution issues on Sunday, so that probably does come down to him. uh but yeah, I mean, I would like to see more invested in the offensive line before I say it's a Chris Forrester issue altogether. Um, yeah, I mean, Colton McKivitz, what was he, like a 6th round pick? Brendel was a free agent. Feliciano was solid. Feliciano was solid. Spencer Burford, who they drafted, and I'm trying to remember what round he was drafted in, but I think it was like 3rd or 4th. You need like 1st round, 2nd round talent, more of that. Yeah, I'd like to see more invested in it.
Yeah, Collie, I don't know what's happened with Burford. Like, he looked promising at the beginning, and I really don't know. Kind of crazy. Collie as well, and this is something too,
5th.
like, are we going to continue to keep one bad special teams coach after another? Like, we can't find anybody better because our special teams is terrible. Terrible. Like, if it's not from guys, like, we've had some stud players lately on special teams that are like being able to like down the ball at the 1, the 2, like making great freaking plays. But other than that, and the Boomin' Onion, Australian, I don't know what his name is, Boomin' Onion, I think. Other than him, like, our special teams is just terrible. Like, Ray needs to go, and Brian Schneider can go with him. What do you think about special teams, about Brian? Do you think it's time to cut ties with him?
I think special teams has continued to leave much to be desired. And yeah, I think that comes down to Brian Schneider. Now, I don't think he's going to be cut loose, just because I think that would have happened in the same presser. Like, that would have probably all been announced. And so maybe they give him another year. for how many coaches the 49ers have already gotten poached this offseason, like, I wouldn't be surprised if they're like, let's not add another. Like Steve Wilks was definitely the one that needed to happen. But aside from that, maybe they give Brian Schneider another year. I'd love to see an upgrade in the return game, a new Ray, a better Ray. Like we need something better there, maybe youth. But like, I don't know. They haven't been able to find someone they can trust there. So veterans have been the answer, but veterans just aren't as, I don't know. They seem to lack some explosiveness, I guess. I don't know. But yeah, I would love to see that improve. They did sign, last offseason, special team aces. But we want to see more.
Yeah, I don't know if they've looked like aces, but yeah, like I get so pissed off when I'm watching other teams play and they get punts or kicks, returns, like maybe not even necessarily back for a touchdown, but at least back 30, 40 yards on the return. And it's just like, I can't remember the last time I got to see that kind of stuff, like what the hell? So I don't know if we need to draft somebody, but it's like even when they drafted, like obviously Pettis was a return guy. Ayuk returned in college. It's just like, so they are drafting guys that have the return capability, but then
I just don't think they have the same level of trust. Like, I mean, Ronnie Bell, when he was doing returns early in the year, that was catastrophic as well.
Yeah.
Like that was Pettis like, and I didn't want to see any more of that. So yeah, maybe the answer is a veteran, but I don't know, what veterans are out there for them.
Yeah. Let's go talk about Ayuk, since he's been in the news ever since, the day after the Super Bowl loss. A lot of stuff has gone on with social media. We've seen his baby mom, I don't know if it's his fiance, girlfriend, put out a post talking about, it could have been hers and their babies, last time ever being at Levi's. And because, Ayuk might not be on the team next season. We've seen his brother / best friends, whatever, come out and say, different things, thanking the 49ers for drafting Ayuk, but, BA to the Raiders. Ayuk even put out his own post talking about don't forget what got you there. He put out another post last night that says, what did it say? It has like a picture of him, like it just shows his back with like a B on the back, and then says, I guess we gonna see. So we know Brandon Ayuk, that the 49ers picked up his 5th-year option. So technically, even if the 49ers don't extend him, he's under contract, right? Typically we know the 49ers that this is when they like to do their deals, so they should be working on a deal if they plan to keep Brandon Ayuk, this offseason. I've seen a lot of Brandon Ayuk hates come out, talking about, okay, if he doesn't want to be here, get him out of here, all this stuff. Listen, I get it. I am not happy when players actually go to the team and ask to be traded, like we've seen in the past, which Ayuk has not done that. But we also know that in today's day, that this is how stuff is done. This is how the younger generation, how the players now, they go to their social media, they scrub their social media, they put out different tweets that, their families go out and say stuff, because this is the only way the players get to say anything these days. They can't go out in front of the media and say anything. They have to be, under a close eye microscope, everything that they're saying to the media. And really, this is their way in trade discussions, their only way to even do anything. So I have no bad anything to say about it. We saw Debo do it. I didn't think it was going to be the last time we saw it. We've seen it happen with other teams now, especially at the wide receiver position. It seems to happen a lot. Okay, as long as shit don't get too crazy, okay. Don't be going to ask to be freaking traded. Like, I understand, like, you're emotional. The team, like, you just put everything you had into the season. The team lost. You guys really thought you were going to win this game. We saw him cry in front of the media, like, all this stuff. Like, we know it's an emotional week for these guys. And I just don't think that hating on the guy is the right thing. But people fan how they want to fan. Do you think the 49ers end up extending Ayuk? Do you think that they should trade Ayuk? Where are you at as of today? 4 days after the Super Bowl loss. Where are you at with Brandon Ayuk?
I think the 49ers will look at all options, and I think that will include if a team were to call them about Brandon Ayuk, I think they would listen. But at the same time, like, I think that would be a pretty big price to pay if if a team wants to trade for him, it wouldn't be cheap, right? So I think the 49ers, because they do want to extend him, I think they would set a high price. And so if a team is crazy enough to reach that price, fine, like, that would make it worth it for the 49ers. But I honestly think that the 49ers are going to get this extension done. We're going to hear a lot of things between now and the start of the season about these negotiations. It might get ugly. One might say it's already, starting to get ugly. But to me, that the way those two things came out, and like, even the very vague things that Brandon Ayuk has said, it came out like clockwork. It was like, as soon as the game ended, it was like, all right, let's try to get BA this contract now. Let's move on to the goal of this offseason, which is getting the contract. Because, I mean, Debo did the same thing. One can argue it worked, I guess. I don't know if it, but look, I've said this on my channel, and I'm going to say it again. BA, Ayuk, he's a grown-ass man, like, he doesn't need his best friend, his partner, whoever the hell else, third cousin removed to be, like, speaking for him on his behalf about what he's gonna do. They have no say in it, quite frankly, all right? So they can say what they want, but at the end of the day, the negotiations happen between Brandon Ayuk, his agent, and John Lynch, and, the 49ers org. So none of this other noise should really, like, worry us, because at the end of the day, like I said, it happened with Debo. They worked it out. Like, it was more dramatics than anything, and it was more dramatic than it needed to be. But, like I said, the negotiations don't happen on the internet. They happen between the businessmen who are, working to get it done. So as long as those guys are working towards a deal, I'm not worried about it.
Yeah. And I know, like, his family, they just have his, best at heart and all that. But it's like, you would think if you really wanted what's best for Ayuk, you wouldn't be putting it out there, BA to the Raiders.
Right. Of all teams, it's like, why the Raiders, man? Like, what?
Like, they already have Devontae Adams. So you think that they're going to break you off the biggest bag out of all the teams? No. So you're not sending him there to get the biggest bag. If it's a champion winning a championship thing, which Ayuk said in his closing press conference, that he mentioned something about winning a championship. So that was obviously important to him. You're sending him to the wrong team with the Raiders again. So whatever your concern is with Brandon Ayuk, if you want him to go out and be the number one wide receiver and put up, 1,800 yards, whatever, again, Devontae Adams is there. And they have no quarterback.
Yeah, they had a hard enough time getting him the ball most of the time. I had Devontae Adams on a fantasy team. Trust me, he was
Me
not
too.
always getting those targets.
No. I'm just like, man, this is crazy. So let's talk a little bit about Debo. Because we know most teams, they usually pay one wide receiver and have some cheaper, guys. How do you think Debo's production has been since he signed his contract extension these last 2 years? Are you happy with what we've gotten from Debo since he's signed that contract extension? Now, this is including the big games, the Super Bowl when we need him the most, when he had 3 for 11 for 33 yards. The injuries, play that all into it.
Yeah.
Put on your GM hat. You can sign Ayuk, but you got to trade Debo. Or you're going to keep Debo and trade Ayuk. What are you doing?
I think with the way that the 49ers offense has kind of evolved a little bit, and the 49ers, I think, have a quarterback that they can do a little more like drop back game with. I think Brandon Ayuk is the guy you would want. I mean, he's the definition of an X receiver. He's the definition of a wide receiver one. So I think Ayuk would be the one I'd want to keep out of the two. What I love about Debo that I think is, you know, it's invaluable to the 49ers is his energy and his ability to call his own number, right? Like, and we've seen it several times this season. Um, and so I would worry about the 49ers losing him too, how they would adjust without Debo, right? I do think that like Debo's contract this upcoming season is going to be crazy. And you look at it and it's what the production, it's not worth what he's getting paid for because Debo's not X receiver. He's not a wide receiver one. And really the reason he got that contract was cuz he had a historic season. He's coming off of that, but other than that, he doesn't even really he didn't have that role against KC. Maybe he should have, but like he didn't have that role. They used him as a straight up wide receiver, and he was either not getting open, not creating that separation, or he had the opportunity to catch a ball and couldn't hang on to it. So yeah, I mean, I think the 49ers do have some decisions to make. It's not that like it's a really tough decision. It's not like I'm sitting here and I'm like, I want to trade Debo
Right.
because Debo's like he's a bum or anything like that. Like I don't think that at all. I think Debo for a while was the identity of their offense, like that bully ball, Uh so I think they'd miss that. But as far as the production and also the role, I think Christian McCaffrey does give you a lot of that as well. And they can find, I don't want to say they can find another Debo because Debo's one of one. Every other team in the NFL wanted to find a Debo for the last few drafts since, Debo blew up and they ain't been able to do it. Right. So it's not like, let's just find another Debo. That's not what, they need. But I think this offense is beginning to evolve past the point of needing Debo the way that we have come to know him. And so, I mean, for that reason, I think I'd keep Ayuk. I mean, he's also younger. His body hasn't taken as many blows as Debo's has. I mean, some of those injuries starting to catch up to Debo. I think so. It'd be a tough decision, but I mean, if one of those needed to be made, that would be my choice, I guess, of the two.
What about Jawan Jennings? I believe he's a restricted free agent. Do you think with the way he played through the playoffs, I really believe that had the 49ers won the Super Bowl, he probably would have been MVP. Do you think he played himself into a contract that another team is going to offer him and maybe the 49ers won't match it? Do you think this is the last time we saw Juwan Jennings in a 49ers uniform?
He might have. He might have played himself out of being able to return to the 49ers, but he'd get a better opportunity somewhere else. I mean, he's a dog. He's a
Mhm.
dog, and he's like the perfect wide receiver 3, I think, for the 49ers. Like, the role he had, just being so reliable on 3rd down, um, blocking. Dude
Mhm.
blocks his ass off. I don't like he might be the best wide receiving blocker on the team. And so yeah, I think a lot of teams probably took notice. Like the national media was talking about Jawan Jennings and how
Mhm.
good he is at blocking and his pancakes and all of that. Like, so yeah, I think he put the league on notice this year. Now I don't know what his role would be elsewhere, so I don't know what teams would be willing to pay him. But I guess it depends on what. So when you're an RFA, I believe the 49ers would put uh like a draft round grade on him or something like that. Like, and then the team, if there's a team willing to match that, I believe I don't remember how it works, but there are some there's some trickiness to it where if the
Mhm.
49ers want to keep him, they would set him at a higher, round. Uh, I feel like the second would be the highest they would
Yeah.
go, and that's pretty high. Um, but I mean, his production, well, what he's done for the team and the offense maybe matches that.
Yeah, I mean, we saw the same, situation with Kendrick Bourne, and we saw when he became available, the Patriots did, break him off a contract that was a lot more than the 49ers were willing to give him. And I know a lot of people were sad when he lost KB because he brought that energy and whatever. But then we had Juwan Jennings that kind of just inserted himself into that role and has been an upgrade at the position, more physical, brings the energy, better blocker, more reliable. And like I would hate to see him, like get a bag and go somewhere else. And then it's kind of like he becomes this forgotten thing, kind of like KB did. um, like I want him to get his bag, like, but I want the 49ers to be able to, like pay him and keep him here. Like you
Yeah,
said, he fits so much into what the 49ers are. Like the blocking, the physical, like we lose him on the offense and like we lost the dog of the offense, like you can't just, oh, I'm going to go draft a new dog that's going to bring the energy, that's going to bring the fight, that's going to bring all that to the offense. Um, there's a lot of tough decisions coming up with this right wide receiver room. I would love for them to be able to keep them all, but that's usually a little impossible, especially when we're talking about all the same position. So yeah, I would hate for that to be the last time that we saw Jennings in a 49ers uniform in a Super Bowl loss where he was the best player on either team's offense on the field, throwing touchdowns, scoring touchdowns. Just man, he was like it was awesome watching him on during the Super Bowl. But yeah, definitely tough decisions ahead for them. Glad I don't have to make them. Let me talk to you. Talk to me a little bit about how your thoughts on the whole coin toss situation. The players unsure of the overtime rules. We heard it come out from the Kansas City side that that's something that they talked about in their meetings all throughout the whole preparation.
hmm
And we found out that Kyle, right before overtime, told his position coaches, talk over with the players and make sure they know what's going on. after the game, it still seemed there was quite a few players that had no clue what the hell happened, what was going on. We've seen videos now come out from the Super Bowl where the Chiefs are like literally laughing at the 49ers for, winning the coin toss and taking the ball first. We know that Kyle, he's came out with a couple different stories. The first thing was he did that because about the third possession, if the 49ers scored a touchdown, then Kansas City got the ball and scored a touchdown. He wanted to be the next team that got the ball and could end, the game. We've heard it. Oh, the defense was tired. They just were on the field for a long time. They needed rest. All this different shit. Juice said it doesn't really matter if he knew the rules because that had no effect on what happened in overtime, how the guys played, or any of that. Where are you at with this whole coin toss, overtime, rule, confusion, all that nonsense?
I mean, it's definitely a little embarrassing that some of the players didn't know. Not only did they not know, but they literally like went and told the media about it. It's like you could have just not said that or any of it. Just pretend you knew. But yeah, I mean, obviously not being a scenario the 49ers as a team had talked through beforehand. It seemed like Kyle Shanahan already knew that if they got into that situation, like he with the analytics department had kind of walked through the scenarios and it led him to feel like getting the ball first would be the right move. So that's what he's sticking to. I'm okay with him saying like his reasoning for sticking to go with it first. But then also at a certain point, you have to also consider who you're playing against, and that's something the analytics aren't going to tell you, right? Like, okay, how do these percentages change if the opponent is Patrick Mahomes? Could we get
Yeah,
that
exactly.
information? Because I think it'd be a little different. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. Maybe it was analysis paralysis, like just or just not thinking about who's on the other side enough. I don't know. Um like it's like I'm okay with the decision, but clearly there it wasn't thought out, maybe quite enough in like as it pertains specifically to who you're going up against.
So when they're going to overtime, whatever, it wasn't all the captains that went out there for the new coin toss. It was just Fred and Mahomes, right? So as Fred's going out there at that time, is Kyle telling him if you win the coin toss, receive? Like,
Mhm.
or
Yep, he told them we wanted it. There's a clip of like one of the clips that are circulating of from inside the NFL. There's a clip of Kyle telling him we want the ball, Fred.
mm,
So
interesting.
yeah.
Because I was wondering if Fred had just, went out there just like he's just used to winning the coin toss and receiving yada yada, and was just like, okay. And then Kyle tried to cover Fred's ass by not throwing him under the bus, but obviously, no, that ain't the case either. So I don't know, but it is embarrassing because that's been like the talk of everything since.
But you know
Whether
what?
it,
I also think it's being overblown a little bit. I'll say this, like, it should have never even come down to overtime. The second it even got to overtime, like, the game was over in my eyes because there's no way the Chiefs were gonna lose that game. The 49ers had a chance to win this game when they had the ball, with 2 minutes to go in the 4th. That's just the reality of it, and it should have ended right there, but it didn't. So then we fixate on what happened afterwards when in reality the game should have been over before then.
yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you. So obviously now a lot's been said about Kyle not being able to win the big one. We know obviously he's lost 2 Super Bowls with us. For some reason, he gets all the blame for losing the Super Bowl as offensive coordinator with with the Falcons. there's people out there that want Kyle fired today, right? What is in with the percent? What is your confidence in Kyle being able to lead this team to a Super Bowl win? And with that, what is your confidence in Brock Purdy now after you saw him starting for, a whole season, what you saw him do in the Super Bowl throughout the playoffs, the whole thing? What is your confidence in Brock being the quarterback to lead this team to a Super Bowl win?
I have a lot of confidence in Brock. I think he played uh, the Super Bowl really well. And, I think Steve Spagnuolo's comments on Brock after the game are very telling of that. I mean, any defensive coordinator is going to say all the good things about the quarterback they're going up against leading up to the game. He was of course very complimentary of Brock leading into the Super Bowl. That's just coach speak, gamemanship, all that. But like for him to say after the game, like we had to basically change our game plan and adjust our coverages because Brock Purdy was, beating our zone coverage in our disguises early in the game. Like that's huge. Like that tells me like Brock is smarter than I think like a lot of people give him credit for. And so yeah, I have a lot of trust in Brock Purdy to be able to win the Super Bowl someday. I also think that, of course, that involves a lot of other different things that would have to be in place for him to do that. But yeah, I think as far as the quarterback position in itself, I think he's capable of that. As far as Kyle Shanahan goes, I think my confidence is tied to Kyle Shanahan's ability to evolve and grow as a head coach. So I don't know if I can give an answer right now, right? Because like he just lost a Super Bowl, so obviously I don't feel confident
Mhm.
at this one very moment. But do I have confidence that he can learn from this? That's yet to be seen. Like I don't know. I really hope so. I really really do. I think we saw some growth from Kyle Shanahan this season in regards to him being able to trust his quarterback and letting I don't know, taking off the reins a little bit for his quarterback and so that helped the offense blossom a little bit more. But still I think some of the like game management stuff is still lacking. I don't know where Miriah went, but maybe she's in the background, I'm not sure. But yeah, I think some of that is still kind of lacking for Kyle. And, hopefully at after learning all of these things and having to go through it and like this is something else I've talked to Rob about, and he was like, "You know what? I'm not even expecting, or I don't even need him to admit he was wrong to us. Like as long as he learned from it and changes things, um, because I don't think we're gonna get any explanations or
Right.
any admission that he was wrong. I think that as long as maybe his decision making evolves over time, the things could improve.
Yep. Steph, what else you have going on that you want the people to know about? Any closing thoughts? And we're getting out of here.
Well, I mean, it's the off season now, so the schedule, my weekly schedule is going to be a little different. It's not going to be every single day. I'm not the type to beat a dead horse, so all of these topics that we get, they're just going to be regurgitated throughout this off season, right? Like you're going to hear the same thing over and over again to the point of like kind of making it a bigger deal than it is. That's not what I want to do with my off-season content. But I'm not going to disappear either. So, make sure you guys stay subscribed to the channel, Steph 49K. What I actually like to do in the off season is, Miriah, like I like to work in a lot of draft content. I interview players, prospects, if you guys didn't know. So those will start getting scheduled in the coming days, and hopefully starting next week, I'll start on those. And of course, always my draft sheet is something that I work on from now until the draft. So yeah, stay tuned. There'll be a lot of draft content. I know you guys are excited for the offensive linemen the 49ers can potentially draft, but eventually will ignore. So, make sure you guys tune into that stuff.
Yep, I can't wait. I can't wait to be able to talk to you, question you about all the draft stuff, because that's where I got all my draft info last season was you. And we weren't doing a show at the time, so I had to just, be nosy and sneakily find all my info and carry it on over here. But now I got you right here, so even better.
Yep.
Chat, we appreciate you guys so much. It's been an awesome season. Obviously, it didn't end the way we wanted to the ends, but I'm not taking for granted anything that we had this season. It was awesome. You guys made what me and Steph had here awesome. The first season of the Two Goat Show goes down as a great one, and that's a lot in part to all of you guys that continue to show up every Thursday and support us and listen to us and have the chat going crazy like you guys do. It is greatly appreciated. So yeah, make sure you guys stick around for the off season. We'll be here. We'll try to keep, the topics fresh and exciting for you guys, so that we're not just, like Steph said, talking about the same old shit all off season long, because I don't want to do that either. So yeah, much love, fam. We're out of here. Until next time, everybody stay safe out there. Please stay safe. Take care. Much love.